Jai, welcome to the Microdose Pro headquarters,
Yeah, thanks, man.
and welcome to the team as well.
Yeah, thanks.
We
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. We recently started, of course, with microdosing therapy, as you know,
Yeah, coaching.
coaching. Sorry,
Yeah, yeah.
microdosing coaching. So we recently started with microdosing coaching,
Yeah,
and what many people I think don't know is that microdosing and coaching, that really goes hand in hand, and we know each other from way back.
yeah. From studying,
Studying from
and
college.
holding it. Yeah.
It's a lot. It's like 4 or 5 years back or something like that. Even longer, I think.
Dude, I've been studying. I spent 6 years at university, and it's been a while now since I graduated the last time. So yeah, I think like 8 years back, 9 years back at least.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Fucking long time.
It's way more than 5 years. Anyway, we recently got in touch again because we saw you were doing some interesting stuff regarding psychedelics,
Yeah.
and we had a chat, and it really clicked. And now you are on the Microdose Pro team. Maybe it's a good idea to elaborate a bit on what you do within Microdose Pro and where your value lies within our brand and community.
Yeah, sure. Well, so I was brought on board because I had a chat with Kai, one of our friends and one of the other founders of Microdose Pro, and I'd been looking at what you guys were doing and growing, and business seemed to be good. And I asked Kai, like, hey, how are you guys in advising people? What do you do when you get people that send you an email and ask, well, hey, I feel depressed, or I've got certain issues that I want to deal with, and I want to use microdosing in order to help me with that? And Kai said, well, we don't really, because this is not our area of expertise, and we're really careful with that. But we would like to be able to give these people some kind of support, some kind of help. That's where I come in. So I am a psychologist, and I've been working in mental health a while now, within different themes. So with trauma, with like the normal everyday psychology, which is like burnouts and depressions and anxiety. And most of my time I've been working with addiction, which is really interesting. And also kind of funny because this is drugs.
Yeah, indeed. It's like,
More or less, well, for a lot of people it is. I think about psychedelics a little bit differently. And yeah, my academic background is, in psychology, of course. I did my bachelor's, and I did a master's in clinical neuropsychology. And after that, another master's in clinical psychology.
so you're really well equipped for the job.
Well, I hope so. Yeah. Yeah. And as to your question, where the value lies, I think I am, quite up to date with the latest that is going on in academic research surrounding psychedelics, surrounding microdosing also. I have a therapeutic background, so this helps me a lot in, working with people who want to change things in their lives.
Yeah. What really put me or you on my radar was also the fact that you are actively involved with the whole ECPR 2020 convention, right?
Yeah. So I
Or ICPR,
ICPR is,
ICPR is,
yeah.
of course a Dutch.
Yeah. Yeah. So little over a year back, I started working with ICPR as a volunteer.
Yeah.
And ICPR is the Interdisciplinary Conference on Psychedelic Research, and it is one of the bigger conferences that focuses only on academic research within the field of psychedelics. So it's we had a lot of people talking about clinical research, like using psychedelics for depression, or using psychedelics for the treatment of trauma. But also lots of research about indigenous psychedelic use, anthropologists coming to talk about it. Lots of different subjects was really interesting. And we also did some panels on microdosing.
Nice. And what was your role in that?
Well, I started off as a volunteer, and after a while, I took on the role as manager. So, yeah, I was mostly, trying to get everything to work smoothly, and get the teams. We had a great team, lots of really nice people, really enthusiastic people, and try to support them wherever they need it.
I think also to highlight, because you said your value for Microdose Pro is of course your background, your knowledge of certain studies. For us, microdosing always was a thing we did ourselves, which was very powerful, and we saw, hey, this works. But I'm not diving into the studies all day long.
No.
And it's very good to have someone on board who actually does that and who's actually familiar with the recent developments within the scientific community.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for that. Really nice, and it is super interesting to me everything that's going on. When I studied psychology, I was always a little bit bummed and even maybe a little bit worried because I saw all this super interesting research about emotions, about treatment, about everything that entails the human experience. And I thought, well, all of this has been researched and has been discovered already, and I don't feel like there's anything left for me to discover. There's no blank pages anymore. And within psychedelics, I really found that.
I can imagine.
I really found that blank page. There's so much for us to dive into, to discover, to research. Lots of things have been started right in the 1960s, and there was so many promising things going on. But then it all halted due to political reasons, and I feel like the entire subject of psychedelics has a delay of around 50 years compared to other fields in psychology.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's exactly it, because I've also noticed with microdosing and the community that we now have that a lot of people, they have a real interest in the holistic part of it and the self experimentation part of it. But what I would really love to see more is actually a hardcore scientific approach to it. And I see this also in you, that you are very rigid when it comes to making claims and to making certain statements about psychedelics or microdosing. And I think that is what we need right now also within the psychedelic business communities, that we need to take it serious, and we need to step up our game in order to show the world this is some serious stuff that we are talking about.
Yeah, and we need to be careful around that because we found that in the 1960s there were these grand claims about what psychedelics could do, and I think that people weren't careful enough around that, and that it got misunderstood and abused even. And I think that is the biggest challenge that one of the bigger challenges. There are other challenges, of course, that we're facing within the psychedelic communities that is getting a lot of traction. There is a lot of attention for the subject, more and more. Right, you see your normal daily newspapers reporting on scientific findings about psychedelics, but you also see a lot of stuff happening on the ground, and that is where there's not so much control, and you don't really know who's guiding you into what. And while I firmly believe there are so many people that are very qualified to guide people within the use of psychedelics, there are often also people that are not as qualified, and that can lead to serious harm in some cases.
Yeah, fully agree with that, and that's why I'm glad to do this also with you now. I think it's important because we've talked a bit about your background, of course, and psychedelics as a whole. This podcast, I also want to set the intention to give a bit more clarity on what microdosing is and why we actually started it, and why we both are so interested in this new endeavor of psychedelic therapy almost, we can say, or coaching, whatever we want to call it, but it definitely helps people to improve their lives and to feel better. And that for me is the big why of it. But first of all, for people that are new to microdosing, what exactly is microdosing? How would you describe that?
Yeah. So I would describe microdosing as taking small amounts of psychedelics. Psychedelics could be LSD, yeah, it could be psilocybin, but also mescaline, which is found in certain cacti, and DMT is used for microdosing. But I believe the most common substances are LSD and psilocybin.
Yeah.
You take small doses of it, and it gives you certain positive effects, about which we will talk a little bit later. And it's a kind of a safe way to experience psychedelics for some. So lots of people are not comfortable with taking higher doses, and well, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah,
It can be
definitely.
scary and even dangerous if you're not ready for it. Microdosing psychedelics is a really safe way. It doesn't do too much for most people, but it does have some really beneficial effects.
So that is the brief explanation about microdosing. I see you want to tell a bit more.
Yeah, I think maybe it's good to talk about the terminology around microdosing, because
exactly.
Micro means 1 out of 1,000, and a microdose of psychedelics is actually 1/10 of a normal dose.
Okay.
Right. So for LSD, a normal recreational dose would be 100 milligrams. Micrograms.
Okay. Yeah. Very important.
Very important distinction. Like 100 micrograms, and a microdose would be about 10 micrograms.
All right.
Same goes for magic mushrooms, right? The dried magic mushrooms are a normal dose somewhere around 2 grams dried, and a microdose is about 0.2 grams.
Just to hook into that, because you name now a few very potent substances like DMT, LSD. These are if you take this in a recreational dose, this will definitely alter your whole conscious experience of life and the world. So I think that is the question I get the most from people that are new to this. They are a bit scared in a regard. Like they say, but this is LSD or this is psilocybin. These are shrooms,
Will this change me? Will I still be myself?
Yeah, will I not jump out of the window and this kind of stuff? So I think it's quite important to highlight that microdosing is definitely not taking such amounts that you will go into those kind of mental states, right?
No, definitely not. The goal of microdosing is sub-perceptual effects, which is kind of weird because that would be so when I hear sub-perceptual, I think about not feeling anything.
Yeah,
which is not the goal in microdosing. You do want to feel something. I think sub-perceptual is more about no visual effects. No major changes in the way you perceive reality. I think sub-perceptual is like slight differences in mood, for example, or slight differences in looking outside and seeing the sunshine and thinking, oh, wow, this is actually quite nice, while not thinking, well, what the fuck is going on outside? Yeah.
No, exactly, yeah. No, that is definitely it. So I think it should be clear for people that you will not have a trip or you will not see elephants or whatever.
No, you won't freak out.
Yeah.
You won't be weird. People won't notice you are microdosing.
Yeah,
No.
definitely the case. And I think another the first question I get a lot is, okay, is it safe for me to do? Will I trip? But the question that always follows is it legal to do this? Can I just do this? Because these are drugs, right? That's what the common perception is.
Yeah.
So what would your answer be to that?
Well, we live in Holland, right? And our system of classifying drugs is maybe a bit strange. So microdosing LSD would be illegal because LSD is still a controlled substance. Microdosing magic mushrooms would also be illegal. However, microdosing magic truffles would be legal because magic truffles fall under a different, uh,
Law.
within a different category.
Yeah.
Magic mushrooms are smart drugs and not hard drugs, and therefore legal. So this is why you sell the truffles.
Exactly. This is the main reason. I can also say that I've microdosed many substances, also mainly LSD in the past when I started. For me, the experience is not too different from microdosing with psilocybin, with magic truffles. I feel a little bit. It's more I feel on the body with psilocybin, but for us this was of course the main reason to choose for truffles, because this is legal and we can not sell anything that's not legal. So
you want to be a retailer, not a dealer.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. So that's the whole thing. But this also shows immediately that it's still a gray area for lots of people, that it is legal. It's fully legal to do this here in Amsterdam, in Holland. And we actually, this is like, you can just buy a coffee or you can take a microdose. It's not something that you should hide from people. It's fully legal. This is fine. Yeah. But of course, it's new. It's quite. It's now coming to the surface, and people are tasting the feeling of microdosing. Like they're experimenting right now, and this is quite a cool situation that we have right now, and that brings me to the most important question for me with microdosing, when it comes to microdosing, is why would people do this? Because it's quite something to take a small amount of drugs every few days. Like, what would be the main reason for people to do that if the effects are sub-perceptual?
Yeah, good question. Well, I think the main reported reasons for getting into microdosing is for a large group of people because they have certain mental health issues that they want to work with. And I think for a lot of these people, they don't really feel the confidence in ordinary therapy or in ordinary psychiatric medicine. So let's say, for example, you're feeling depressed.
Yeah.
And you don't want to go talk to a therapist. Maybe you've had, a bad experience when talking with a therapist before. So that's off the books, or not off the books. That's off the table.
Off the table, yeah.
Or you don't want to use antidepressants for personal reasons. You don't feel like you want to medicate yourself with synthetic drugs, and therefore you could go to microdosing because there are anecdotal reports that microdosing helps with depression or low mood. Another reason is that people want to are working on self-development, and they want to get an extra boost to their self-development regime, and that will be a reason for people to get into microdosing. And I think the last one, and also a really common one, is curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah. People want to try new things. People want to see, okay, what happens when I do this? It's why people get into drugs, right? Because I work in addiction care. It's why all my clients come to see me in the end, because they are curious people. They are maybe a little bit impulsive, and they, get in touch with cocaine or with weed or other stuff. And if you're not curious, if you're not willing to find out, what happens when I do this, then you won't go there. And I think the same goes for a lot of people who want to do microdosing.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with the curiosity aspect. For me, the first time I tried this, it was not even a microdose. It was like a full-on recreational dose.
Yeah.
Just because I wanted to experience how does this substance or plant alter my consciousness.
Yeah.
And only later I realized, hey, I can use this psilocybin, this shroom, also to upgrade my personal development and to upgrade my life. And that was quite a realization that I also can use it for those kind of reasons.
Yeah.
So I would say that when I look at our clients at Microdose Pro, the funny thing is that the first time we made our website, we launched it, we thought we are going to help people like us, like young entrepreneurs, and they want to be hyper focused, they want to be more productive. So we really branded it as some kind of coffee 2.0, you know,
Yeah.
like you will get an upgrade in energy, and you
Yeah,
will
like
be
the new nootropic.
yeah, exactly. And that was our personal use for psychedelics and for microdosing. But we realized that after a while, most of our clients and customers they used it to feel better. And I was surprised by that because I thought it's mainly a drug or a nootropic or a substance in order to improve your current workflow or productivity. And then I started doing more research as well, and I saw this study that I think you sent it to me, a 2019 study from the benefits and the challenges of
Yeah.
microdosing. And I saw that mood was actually the number one reason to microdose.
Yeah.
And that made me think because it did indeed make me feel better every time I've done it. But I use that feeling of feeling better in order to be more productive. But you can also bring that energy towards other parts of your life
Yeah.
to be more in tune with yourself or with your emotions or with nature or all those things.
Yeah.
And that really opened my eyes to the fact that microdosing is such an amazing concept that we now are exploring.
Yeah, and so nice to hear you talk about that. I'm glad that you brought it up because there's lots of ways you can go when microdosing, and there's lots of ways in, lots of different intentions that you can have when starting microdosing. Like for one person, it will be, well, I want to function better at my job, while the other says, well, I want to, spend more time on myself and try and see if I can make some adjustments.
Yeah, what for me was quite interesting is that this study also sent me where they highlight the benefits and challenges of microdosing, that the main benefits are mood, focus, and creativity, but
Mm.
also the challenges are also impaired mood and impaired focus.
Yeah.
And that for me was quite strange at the beginning. Like, how can this be? How can the benefits be the same as the challenges? But then I realized also this is, of course, it has to do with the dose. And it's so specific for each person. But we will come into the dosage a bit later.
Yeah, but you're completely right. So we're going to talk about finding your sweet spot later, and you will find that if you have your sweet spot, you will find that you are more energetic, that your mood is better, that you're feeling good, that you're feeling more sociable, and if you are off, you have an off day, so you take a little bit too much than what it would be your sweet spot, you will probably feel a bit restless and a bit scattered in your mind and less able to focus and be in touch with others.
Yeah.
And I think maybe to go into that a little bit more, like the benefits and challenges, that 2019 study really showed that they had a cohort of, I believe, 280 people, more or less.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
something. Like
And they showed that there was only one person within that cohort that said he had none beneficial effects
really.
whatsoever. Yeah. So the people that reported feeling some negative effects also reported feeling positive effects.
All right, that is super interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So there was one person in that whole study that didn't report any beneficial effects.
Yeah. That's it. This was not for me at all. I didn't feel happier. I didn't feel more energetic. I didn't feel anything except shitty.
This perhaps is, I think it's a nice bridge because James Fadiman also says that a lot of anecdotal reports he receives are predominantly positive.
Yeah.
And we actually talked about this earlier today. The placebo effect also could play a role in that. And this for me is an area that we need to explore a bit more, because the people that we also have as clients at Microdose Pro, they are people that most often they have a conscious goal in order to improve themselves. And so they're saying to themselves, I'm gonna be more serious with my life. Now I'm gonna journal, I'm gonna microdose, I'm gonna wake up at 6 a.m. every morning,
Yeah.
So it could be, of course, that the whole placebo effect also plays a big role in that.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it is a really interesting subject because let's preface this by saying that there is very little research into microdosing, and this goes for the rest of the podcast, right? There's only a few studies, and none of them are real golden standard randomized controlled trials, which we really love in psychology and in science. But the placebo effect, what we see in higher doses, so in the clinical work where they use high dose of psychedelics, is that they say that psychedelics are non-specific amplifiers.
What does that mean?
Well, that means that when you take a psychedelic, it will amplify whatever's there. So if you feel depressed, if you take a psychedelic, it will amplify that feeling of depression. And within clinical work, that can be really helpful because maybe you want to go towards that feeling of depression in order to work with it and in order to really get some change done. What it means for placebo is that if you, and we're still talking about high doses, but if you give someone a high dose of psychedelics and you tell them beforehand, this is going to be a very special experience. And, it might be really spiritual and there might be things that will happen to you, then there is a really big chance that those things will actually happen. If you were to give someone a high dose of psychedelics and you will tell them beforehand, well, this is going to be a really scary experience and you're probably going to go through some kind of hell, but it will help you, then there's a really big chance that will be their experience as well. And if we take that and bring it to microdosing, we see that the expectations people have beforehand when starting microdosing are often really predict the results that they get. So there is a big question, like, is this a placebo or not? And it seems, it's still undecided whether or not psychedelics and microdosing psychedelics is a placebo. What we do know is that there are real significant improvements in mental health for the people that expect significant improvements in mental health.
And we saw that in the study also that came out last week, right?
Yeah, that was super interesting, and those researchers also argued like we really need the chance to do proper scientific research to find out if this is actually better than placebo, because a lot of the anecdotal evidence points towards psychedelics doing a lot more than placebo when microdosing. However, we just don't have the data to say, well, here it is, we found this to be true.
For me, my opinion is that even if it would be a placebo, this would still help people.
Yeah.
So I don't believe it's a placebo, but even if it would be, I don't really mind because we are changing the lives of people in a positive way.
Yeah.
So that's the aim. That's the good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So if it's placebo, I'm totally fine with it.
Yeah.
I don't believe it because I have taken also sometimes too much of a microdose, and then I definitely feel I am feeling something here. This is not a placebo effect in the sense that I'm just making this stuff up for myself. You can of course argue, I am feeling stuff. How does this really help to better my life, to improve my life? But for me, this discussion is not as interesting from the effects that it has. We can see that our clients also say that their lives are changing, and that's amazing. That we facilitate that.
Yeah, that's
right?
beautiful.
So that's my view on the whole placebo thing. Like even if it's the case,
and to kind of go against the placebo hypothesis is we do know that even microdoses of psychedelics do bring on changes in brain chemistry.
Yeah.
And also that kind of research is still in its early stages, but we do know that there are things happening there, and we'll get into that later.
Well, maybe we can dive a bit into that now as well, because I think that you also, as a neuropsychologist, are interested in the things that are happening in the brain, right?
Yeah.
And with our last podcast with Zoe on flow states, I researched a bit more what's happening in the brain when you enter a flow state, because we are both, Zoe and I, really into achieving this flow state experience.
Yeah.
And I realized that, or I learned that in a flow state, your prefrontal cortex actually goes offline in big parts, and the default mode network, so to speak, also starts to shift.
Yeah, maybe it's good to talk a little bit about the default mode.
Yeah, great. Like, I think you can tell me more about what it is. What is the default mode network?
Yeah, so the default mode network is a collection of brain areas, right? I won't go into all the names of them to keep it simple. But it's a collection of brain areas that are connected to each other, that are believed to be responsible for a few very important cognitive functions. So the default mode network is responsible for your sense of self. Right? So if I were to ask you, hey Niels, can you tell me something about yourself? Can you tell me something about your youth? Then you will start diving into, okay, well, who am I actually? And that is where your default mode networks lights up. It also lights up when your mind is wandering. The default mode network is all about fantasizing about the future or thinking about the past. It is thinking about how you as a person fit into your own memories, or how you as a person fit into the future. So this can be really helpful, right? For planning. I need to know where I want to go in my life. That's helpful for me. So I can think about, what things are important to me. And there's the me again. And I can think about what I want and how I would like to do that and how I could do that. And that's all function of the default mode network. So far, still helpful, still productive. However, when I suffer from anxiety, or when I'm worrying about things that might happen to me, or might happen to people that are dear to me, then the default mode network lights up. So excessive worrying about the future, about the past, is also the default mode network. Ruminating about the past, something we all do, also default mode network. Thinking about what is right or wrong is also something that is done by the default mode network. So thinking about, what, let's say, for example, I see someone being robbed in the street, and you would ask me, how would you feel about that? Then my default mode networks lights up, because I will be processing what I, as a person, think about someone else being robbed. So the default mode network is like essential for daily functioning. However, it does work against you at times. So for example, if you want to focus, then you need to focus on a task and not be thinking about, why you aren't working right now, or why Corona is happening. You have a curfew at 9 every evening. Or about that stupid thing you said 3 years ago to your ex-girlfriend. I don't know. Stuff like that. So the default mode network can get in the way of normal functioning.
All right, so this is what you wanted to...
No.
Okay, I was curious because I think what we both have experienced on higher doses of psychedelics, and this has been proven also by science, is that the default mode network alters when you take a high dose of, for example, psilocybin.
Yeah.
And then you can really see that. And that is probably also a big explanation of why your whole sense of ego starts to dissolve,
Yeah.
and the experience of ego death and all
Yeah.
these things.
So yeah, exactly. So what psychedelics do is they essentially shut down the default mode network, and
All
this
right.
is like mostly relevant for the high doses, right? The default mode maybe not shut down completely, but its activation gets lessened.
You can see it in a way, as I as a newbie understand it, that different parts of the brain start connecting that otherwise are not connecting, right?
Yeah.
And that is why I can see sound, I can see music, for example, or I can hear colors
Yeah.
when I am on a
Yeah.
high dose of
Yeah.
psilocybin.
That's called synesthesia.
All right.
So the linking of senses that are normally separate, right? So that will be hearing, taste, for example, like you said, or seeing music. The brain is organized in a way that is very efficient. We are as successful as we are as humans because our brain is really good at pattern recognition. So let's take, for example, driving a car. You've got your driver's license,
I do.
so you know how it was, right, to learn how to drive a car.
Oh, that was a hell.
It is super difficult. It is a very complex set of actions. You need to do a lot of things at the same time. You need to watch the traffic. You need to shift gears. You need to pump the gas or pump the brakes or whatever. So it's super complex. And the first time you do that, you get a complete overload. It's too difficult for you to drive a car at your first go. I mean, maybe all you can do is watch the traffic and steer the wheel and leave it at that. But as time goes by and as you do this stuff more often, lots of things get automated. So you don't need to constantly think about shifting your gears, or you don't need to constantly think about kicking the clutch, or you don't need to constantly be on the lookout for everything that's dangerous because you know that things are going to be fine and you're used to it. So that's really helpful. However, and here we go again, same as the default mode network, all things that are helpful, or well, most things that are very helpful, also have their caveats. And in this case, the pattern recognition or the pattern making ability of the brain really causes us to make the wrong patterns.
The wrong connections.
Yeah.
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 So we see things that are not really there.
Yeah, maybe, or we're used to responding to things in a certain way. So, in a clinical example, this would be as a depressed person, you see lots of things in a negative light, right? So let's say someone with a history of trauma, with a history of abuse, is walking down the street, and they hear a child screaming, right? They can think, oh my God, something is wrong, someone is being hurt, this isn't going well. Whereas me, or you or me, for example, walking down the street, hears a child screaming, would probably think, oh, there are children playing. Right? And this is because we go into certain patterns.
And it's your perception that...
Yeah, it's the way you respond to things in life. And so you can get into the wrong is maybe a bit judgmental of a word, non-functional patterns.
All right.
Patterns that don't help you get to where you want to go, or may even make you feel worse. And it's pretty hard to get out of that. And people have bad habits. People smoke. People drink. If you're in the habit of snoozing every time, it's going to be pretty hard to wake up and get out of bed the moment your alarm clock goes off. So now what psychedelics do is they kind of give your brain the temporary ability to move beyond those patterns. So Mendel Kahlen, a researcher in London, made a really nice comparison. He said, compare your brain to a snowy hill, and there are sleds going down that hill, right? So some people are taking the sled down, and this is fresh snow. So the first one goes down, and he leaves a track, and then the second one goes down, and maybe takes a little bit of a different route, but then all of a sudden, or eventually, gets in the track of the other one. This is kind of how brain connections work. So
is it neural pathways?
yeah.
All
So
right.
you make these neural pathways, and every time you make, you take the same pathway, that pathway gets stronger and gets easier to navigate for your system. So this is how these patterns come to exist. Now, what psychedelics do is they are a fresh batch of snow.
Ah, nice.
They kind of fill up those pathways and give you the ability to easier navigate in another way. And this is especially true for the higher
The
doses.
higher dose, of course, yeah. I was about to ask because what you say right now, I can fully imagine if I would be addicted to smoking, for example, that one high dose of psilocybin would be enough for me to quit that,
Yeah.
to give that insight.
Yeah, and it is insight, but it is also the ability to do things differently in the period thereafter. Because if you do things differently, then that in and of itself becomes a new pathway. And if you repeat that pathway or that behavior often enough, then
That's
that
cool.
becomes the new pattern, but then hopefully a functioning one.
So it is not only the insight itself, the deep realization, the conscious realization that this is a bad pattern, but it also then provides you with the new pathways that can be created.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
quite cool.
And to add to that, they did research in England with treatment-resistant depression and psilocybin. And what they did in this research was they gave these people a high dose of psilocybin, and they monitored their depressive symptoms. And that was it. So no treatment afterwards, other than what they normally have. And what they found was that these people showed significant improvements in depressive symptoms. So they felt better. Some of them even didn't classify as being depressed anymore after years of depression.
Wow.
But what happened was all of them relapsed into depression within 3 months. So the insight that they had was significant for them, right? Significant enough for them to have a great reduction in depressive symptoms for the majority. However, that wasn't enough, so they slid back into their old patterns, and that's why integration, right, and therapy comes into play when psychedelics are being used. I think that's essential for them to be really effective. But that might be for a different time.
Yeah, I know, but that's it's cool that you say that. I agree with that. The whole integration aspect of a psychedelic experience is perhaps even the most important part of the whole experience.
Yeah.
Because I remember me taking a high dose of LSD, for example, like a heroic dose, and I have gotten insights that I've never had before, and I was like, this is it, and this is what I need to do.
I'm a changed man.
I'm a changed man, and then I felt like Jesus walking, So that's a bit too extreme, but I felt deeply this is it. But then to take that knowledge with you in your daily life,
That's the challenge.
the weeks and the months after,
Yeah.
I think that coaching or therapy session that is very beneficial in that regard as well. What I do have with this, all this knowledge that you just shared with me, is that this, of course, is mainly for high doses.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see if there is any already, like, studies on microdosing and these kind of changes in your life.
Yeah. Good question. So there is, to my knowledge, not really any research right now that says microdosing is beneficial for mental health, like non-conclusive. There is a massive amount of anecdotal evidence, but there are some parallels to be made. So we were talking about the default mode network. right? And why that's important. And you say, well, if I get into a flow state, right, then I lose track of time, and I'm in hyperflow. I'm super productive, and it's a very pleasurable experience as well. And it is an experience in which the default mode network has lessened activation. What you find with microdosing, well, anecdotally, of course, is that people tend to get into such a flow state very easily. Well, very easily might differ, but
more easy.
more easily, yeah. Most people, well, that's what most people report. They say, well, I get into a flow more easily. I'm more productive. I get into the flow of working more easily when I microdose.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of points towards, also microdosing having its effects on the way your brain functions. So it could very well be that microdosing does influence the brain activity or the activity in your default mode network. I'm very curious to see what research is going to say about that.
I think we both have quite maybe some assumptions there.
Yeah.
That, of course, that we think,
yeah.
This is the same way I feel in a flow state as I feel with microdosing, or it gets me through that struggle phase way more easily. So there must be some connection. I would intuitively assume, but of course the science is there to prove that.
Exactly. And for me, when I microdose, I tend to find that I do stuff more easily. Whereas normally, I would, let's say I come home from work and I need to do my laundry and do the dishes. Normally I could, contemplate, shit, I don't want to do my laundry. I just had a whole day of work. I'm tired. I just want to relax right now. And then, I procrastinated. I don't do it. And then I eventually I have to, because, I need clean clothes and I need clean dishes. So I have to, but there's a big part of me that doesn't want to, and it takes me a while before I actually get to doing it. And I found that while microdosing, or in periods of microdosing, so not only on my microdosing days, I tend not to have that struggle so much. So I just kind of do stuff.
You're more intuitive, maybe.
Yeah, maybe more intuitive, but I just don't spend too much energy on thinking about what I am going to do.
But this could also, again, relate to the default mode network being offline, or not offline, but less activated.
Yeah, being dampened. Yeah, exactly. It's less me thinking about what I want, what I don't want, and how I would have to grab my clothes, put them in the laundry bin.
Less ego, we can say it like that. And
I think so.
I think this is, of course, at least for me, the first time I ever took a high dose of psilocybin. I experienced ego death the first time. And that was a life-changing experience. To be able to have that conscious state, for me, was what's going on here. I expected to have some nice visuals. And I was spiritually enlightened all of a sudden. I was like, holy shit, what's going on? I need to explore this more. And I think everyone who has ever experienced a similar feeling of ego death on psychedelics or through meditation, they can relate to this sensation that I can let go of the I that I'm constantly hearing in my thoughts, like I need to do this, I have to do this, or I want to do this. Even that I starts to dampen, as you said, even on microdose days for me, and I'm just doing stuff, and I'm just going with the flow, and that translates into massive amounts of productive and creative output, and that's so amazing for me.
Yeah, exactly. And I think maybe even like the I is still there, right? So I still have these thoughts like, I don't want to do my laundry, or I don't want to do this, but I just don't give them as much attention.
Yeah.
And I am well, here we go. I am trained as an ACT therapist. So I do acceptance and commitment therapy. And this is a really big part of what acceptance and commitment therapy entails. It says, well, we all have this shared human condition. We have our mind that is a problem-solving machine, and it's really functional and it really takes care of us. However, it has a really hard time letting go. So everybody will have thoughts, and most of your thoughts will be probably negative in some way. The art of like mindful living is in accepting that you have these thoughts, but not going into those thoughts too much. Don't go into discussion with your thoughts. And I feel, and I think that's being mindful.
This is mindfulness, right?
That's
Meditation.
mindfulness, yeah. It's mindfulness meditation. It's also mindful living, trying to be in the here and now more. And I personally feel that microdosing helps me attain that. And I think most people who microdose report similar feelings, like I'm more in the here and now.
To add to that, I recently realized when I was reading my microdosing log, and I'm tracking my emotions on all these days, and I noticed that on microdosing days, not only the positive effects would enhance, but sometimes also I would be more inclined to have negative feelings. And not so much because they were present within me, or maybe they are, of course I don't know, but I would have less control over that sensation. So I would be more also irritated. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I would have amazing positive feelings, like I would be grateful for the day and for being alive and for being free, all these things. But also within a call, someone says the wrong thing, and I notice within myself, I'm getting a little bit emotionally triggered.
Yeah, you feel your frustration
Yeah.
more than usual.
So I personally come to the conclusion that it opens more up to all the feelings that are within you, and that the I again that usually can function as some kind of a gatekeeper, then is being silenced a bit more. So also these feelings can come up a bit more.
Yeah.
Is that right? Is that in your experience also the case or not?
Yeah, sometimes. And I think here we go again with the psychedelics as non-specific amplifiers. I think that is the case here. I think psychedelics and also within microdosing make you more susceptible to I don't know, negative emotions, bodily discomfort. I know someone who I coached in microdosing, and this person said, "Well, I am having some difficulties concentrating on my microdosing days," and this person found out that while working, she was used to having the TV on in the background and maybe some music and having her phone, which she would check regularly, and that was her way of. She said, "I need some kind of input when working, and if I don't have that input, then I'm distracted more easily." And she found out that when microdosing, this didn't work for her at all. So it was too much input, it was too much stimuli, and she couldn't work. And then she started to, turn down she started working in silence and found that was very helpful for her productivity. And she told me that after she discovered this, not only on her microdosing days, but also on her off days, she would work without music, without the TV, put her phone away when possible, and that she found that her productivity went up.
Yeah.
So, we get used to doing things in a certain way, and we think that's the right way, but maybe it isn't. And
No, definitely.
And I think for a lot of people who go into microdosing with the expectation that it's going to be all positive, that might be a bit disappointing, because you can feel more stressed at times or more sadness, and that is not a negative thing in and of itself. It tells you a lot. It gives you something to work with. But if you're microdosing with the intention of only feeling better, well then
that's not it. And
no.
But that is also why I'm so interested in psychedelics as a whole, and also microdosing, is they functioned for me as a tool in order to be more in tune with myself and my emotions. So also when I take a higher dose, I know if I am in a bad state of mind and I'm gonna take a high dose of LSD, this is probably not a good idea.
No, you shouldn't.
Exactly. So
You shouldn't unsupervised.
unsupervised, you shouldn't do
Yeah.
that. But you will find your demons. You will find your shadows that are living within you. And with microdosing, you will not, find demons in that specific way. But if you feel a bit irritated or you feel a bit down and you take a microdose, it can happen that you will be shown to some suppressed feeling, and that you can recognize it. Hey, I felt a bit down lately. Maybe it was because this and this and this aspect in my life, and you become more aware of that, and now you have the guidance to see where you can improve, like your client or friend has with the deep work session she did. And that for me is the amazing part about microdosing. It's not a wonder drug. It will not show you only positive things. It's something that will guide you as some kind of a, I don't know, mentor, perhaps even, that there are bad things, but also good things. And here are, you can attack them in any way you like. But it's not some kind of pill that will just improve your life
and that. It will function differently for each person.
Yeah, that's I think the why of microdosing. We spend some time here right now, and I think people listening to this, they can have quite a sense of the reasons for us to do this and why we are so attracted to this. But more technical, the how part of it. Let's say I decide tomorrow I want to start with microdosing. How does this process work? Like, what do I do? And is there a specific routine or schedule I need to follow? Because we mentioned off days and on days.
Yeah.
What are these on and off days? How does this go? How much do I take? Like, how do I find my dose? These kind of questions.
Yeah, good one. Very important.
Yeah.
So there are different ways of going about this, and we call these protocols. All right, so you have different protocols, different people saying different things about how to go about microdosing. Let's start with the Fadiman Protocol. So we have this researcher, this gentleman, James Fadiman.
Legend of microdosing.
Yeah, one of the microdosing legends. He's been involved in research since the 60s, when he was just a young researcher. And he is still very actively involved in the psychedelic community. And he is actually one of the people that made, all this mountain of anecdotal evidence we have. He made it possible. He has a site. I can encourage you, if you want to do microdosing, you can visit his site, and he has a kind of log that you can give data to. So tell them how you feel, what your findings are, and he uses that to lobby for more research into microdosing. And he says you do one microdosing day, and then you feel some of the effects. These effects, they have a spillover into the next day. So on day 2, you don't need to take a microdose. And then you have a third day, day 3, in which you also don't take a microdose, and this is your rest day. And after that, you take a dose again. So Fadiman's protocol is 1 day on, 2 days off.
And that repeats then?
Yeah, and that repeats for a while.
All right.
I would like to say about protocols that most of them don't really give a specific timeline for how long to microdose. It is my personal opinion that you should not microdose for longer than 2 months. And this is because, microdosing can bring on a lot of positive effects, but you don't want to rely on them. If you will microdose for a year non-stop and you will stop microdosing, then you might feel like, something's off. I don't know. I'm not my usual self. And you would, of course, want your usual self to be the self that you are without any additions.
Exactly. Plus, there's also not any long-term studies being done, right, on the effects of microdosing.
No.
So I think you say 2 months, but that's a break, right? You can then, after maybe a month of a break, you can start over again.
You can start over again, yeah. But it's very important to keep track of, how dependent are you.
Yes.
And maybe if you feel that you lean too much on microdosing, then it's also not for you.
Yeah.
Maybe try to figure out, why this is so important to you, what stuff you're working with that makes you feel like you need to use microdosing. But that's on the timeline. So maybe back to the protocol. You have another one, and that one is by Paul Stamets. And Paul Stamets is also
the fungi master.
The fungi master. He's a mycologist, so he specializes in fungi and mushrooms and that entire field of biology. And Paul Stamets, he says, well, what you need to do is you need to take 4 consecutive days of microdosing, and then you take 3 days off. Now, the reason why you don't microdose every day is because you build up tolerance for psychedelics really fast. So in order to make sure that you don't build up tolerance, you need to have breaks. Now, Paul Stamets and James Fadiman, they go about the microdosing with different intentions, I believe. So from what I've gathered, Paul Stamets is a mycologist, and he turns to microdosing mostly for the reasons that it has a certain effect on your brain. So what we do know is that psychedelics stimulate neurogenesis, which is, the making of new pathways, which we discussed earlier. And this increase in neuroplasticity allows you to, be more flexible in how you behave. And it is also a sign of brain health. Like how the healthier your brain is, the more neuroplasticity you have.
All right.
And we know psychedelics do this because of one of those, a hormone, which is called the BDNF, the brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And the more you have of this hormone, the more your brain is stimulated to make new connections and to do it easier. Microdosing psychedelics has been proven to increase the amount of this hormone, the BDNF. So what we can gather from that is that it's very possible that, or very likely actually, that microdosing psychedelics actually increases the neuroplasticity in your brain and makes it easier for your brain to form new connections. This is why Paul Stamets says do 4 days in a row. Then you get maximum neuroplasticity. And then take 3 days off to make sure that you don't build up the tolerance, and then start again. Paul Stamets also has a certain stack.
Yeah, I was about to refer to that.
Yeah, so additional supplements. He says use lion's mane, which is also believed to aid in neuroplasticity.
Also a nerve growth factor.
Yeah. And he also says use niacin, which is vitamin B3. And niacin actually helps your body get certain nutrients across the blood-brain barrier. So the addition of niacin makes it easier for the psilocybin and the lion's mane to enter your brain and do their work. So that's Paul Stamets' go-to. Now we got back to James Fadiman, who says 1 day on, 2 days off. James Fadiman is more focused on the psychological effects of microdosing. So he says, well, you take a microdose, you feel differently, you can behave differently. Take your lessons from that, right? And you can get these lessons on day 1 and day 2, because day 2 still has the spillover. And then take 3, and then day 3 is like your rest day, and to feel like how you are normally, and to incorporate what you've learned on day 1 and day 2, and then do it again. And do this for a period of time. Try to see what you've learned and try to incorporate this in your daily routines.
But you, as a neuropsychologist, are those two not linked with each other? So what happens in the brain also impacts your behavior?
Yeah, they are linked, and I think that the neuroplasticity happens in both protocols, and maybe Paul Stamets' protocol is more effective at that. I'm not really sure. I mean, the research just isn't there. I think when trying to pick a protocol for microdosing, it's really important to do what feels good for you. Because I've tried both, and the 4 days on, 3 days off for me is not really working. I don't like it that much.
It's too intense for me as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, 4 days on a microdose, that's heavy for me.
yeah, yeah. I feel tired at the end, and yeah, and this is like one of the downsides that most people report, that they feel tired and they feel maybe a bit drained, because I do get the feeling that your brain works a little bit harder when microdosing, which is a good thing, but you need to give it rest as well. And yeah, I don't know. Like I said, the science isn't really out there, and I don't think the difference would be too big between the two. And the most important thing is to do what feels good for you, right? So, for me, for example, I like when I microdose, I like to do it on set days. So if I would follow the Fadiman Protocol of 1 day on, 2 days off, then you would do it on different days of the week each week. And I'm not the most well organized person there is, so that really messes me up. And then I forget to take my microdose, or, I don't like that. So what my go-to is to take it on set days. Take it on, for example, a Monday or a Thursday, and then you have 1 day off, 1 day on, 2 days off, and then after that 1 day on, 3 days off, which, yeah, shouldn't really make much of a difference.
Yeah, I think to highlight what you're saying is that do what feels good for you, with taking breaks, of course. Don't take a microdose every day if that feels good. I cannot recommend that. We also face this challenge with naming and guiding our clients with these protocols, and we decided to call these the beginner and advanced protocol, just to make it very clear. This is when you start, just start with 1 day on, 2 days off.
Yeah,
right?
and then you can really feel the difference between your dosing days and your off days, and yeah.
Exactly. But be conscious, and definitely, and I think you are also an advocate of that, is to keep track of your experiences in a journal.
Yeah.
And that really helped me. And here again, we touch a bit upon the placebo effect, because already logging your experiences in a journal will help you to be more conscious of your efforts in order to improve yourself, and to feel better, and to keep track of everything.
Yeah.
And when you combine that with microdosing, I feel that's a one-up. You really take a conscious look in how your experience is, and how that how that goes throughout a certain period of time. And I'm curious, are there any logging or journaling tips or tricks that you have specifically in your practice?
Yeah, there are. I always say, keep a log and keep it simple. So for me, I have an Excel sheet, and I know that you use practically the same one, in which I have my clients log 5 different domains. So I have them log or rate their mood, their energy, like the physical sensations, how they've been feeling physically. I have them log how they've been socially. Like, do you feel more sociable, or do you feel awkward within social situations? I have them rate their productivity, because it is a main or a big reason for a lot of people to go into microdosing. And I have them log their creativity. And creativity doesn't have to be like artistic creativity in painting and writing and making music. It is also problem-solving capacity. Right? So you hear lots of people saying that when microdosing, they are able to think out of the box a little bit more, or they find that they have more of those eureka moments where they think, oh wow, this is the solution to our problem. And it's you smiling a bit,
I can attest to that. That's definitely the case for me as well.
Yeah.
What I have noticed, I'm not sure if you know anything about this, but numbers, I cannot work with numbers on microdose days.
No?
So doing finance, hell no. Like the mathematical comprehension goes out the window when I microdose.
Yeah.
And this, I learned this the hard way. I blocked a whole day to do my, the taxes of the last quarter, and I took a microdose. I thought like I'm gonna,
Sit down.
sit down,
I'm gonna
do all these taxes, all
this
these calculations.
piggy,
Yeah, watch this piggy. But I was like, fuck no. And then I did some googling on that, and I saw some Reddit threads where people have the same experience with that. So I think, again, anecdotal, of course, but numbers that's a hard thing on microdose.
Well, it might be for you, right?
Could be the
It
case.
might be
yeah.
that I don't know, an aerodynamics engineer who has to work with equations and numbers and stuff all the time and is used to doing that.
Yeah.
Feels really beneficial effects of microdosing.
I'm not sure we have any aerodynamics engineers in our client base right now, but we can check that. That would be a good
let's
test.
ask around.
Yeah, that could be a good test. All right. Again, we have covered a lot here. I do want to stretch again on the taking a break part, right? And I think that is quite important because we are getting a lot of questions on this. Like, should I take a break? How long should that be? And can I just microdose for the whole year? For us, it was never the intention to sell a product that you would take all the time because it's a good product like coffee, for example. We want to sell a product that helps you to get along, to get further. But we don't want you to get dependent on anything.
No.
So taking this break for me it's really important.
Yeah.
In that way.
Yeah, especially I think for you guys as retailers, you're basically telling your customers to not use your product all the time.
Yeah, that is crazy, right?
Yeah, which is
not
which is counterintuitive, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the marketing guy, but no, but I do think it is really important, and the reason that one of the reasons that I wanted to work with you is because I feel like you do care about what kind of information you supply your customers with, and you do care about responsible use, and that is very important, and that is for me the key. Like, I work in addiction care. I want people to take care of themselves.
Yeah,
that would be great if that will work, and taking a break from all this helps, and taking a break from everything helps. Like, taking a break from alcohol helps a
like
lot.
you do right now, right?
Like I'm doing right now. Yeah. And I really love that. I really love how taking a break shows me what kind of an effect something has on me. So for example, now I'm taking a break from alcohol, and I'm not someone who drinks a lot. I don't drink on weekdays. I drink in the weekends, but then still I feel the effects. And for example, last year there were 3 months of the year that I didn't drink, and it was such a tremendous help for my physical well-being, my general mood, how I felt at work, how productive I was, and I experience the same right now. And then you feel like, okay, drinking can be really nice and fun, but also the cost, man. I mean,
microdosing is cheaper than drinking.
Microdosing is it's cheaper and it has less negative consequences. But advocate of the devil here. No, but it's important to be in control of yourself, and being dependent on something is simply not good. I mean, for example, I'm not sure if I should say this with my current work, but when I was studying, when I was doing my bachelor's, I used a lot of Ritalin, methylphenidate, to study. Right? I was kind of lazy, and I wouldn't go to most of my classes, and I would kind of just have fun. And then for 2 weeks during the exam period, I would study from 9 in the morning till 12 in the evening, go to bed, wake up, study from 9 in the morning, 12 in the evening, do that 2 weeks in a row. and I would use Ritalin to help me, help me focus, help me give me the energy and the concentration to get that done. And when I did my my first masters, I thought, okay, now this is serious and this is all stuff that I'm really, really interested in. So I want to do it the good way. I'm gonna go to all my classes. I'm gonna, read all the books, keep track of everything during the period, and I'm not going to use Ritalin when studying. And to my amazement, I found out that I was able to study for 4 or 5, 6 hours a day maximum.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck, this is such a setback, and that was completely because I was so used to having this extra support, right, to get me on to perform on a different level than what I would have in me normally.
Yeah, your baseline.
Yeah. So this studying with Ritalin was my new baseline, and it took me quite a while to get adjusted to not studying with Ritalin. And I mean, it would be such a shame if people would experience the same with microdosing, because it can be very helpful and it can be a beautiful addition to things that you do in life. However, if you lean on it too much, then it becomes a negative.
I cannot agree with that more because I spent my college years on modafinil.
Yeah.
So that also got me through those years. I'm not sure, is Ritalin toxic? Is it?
Yeah, people are on the fence about that.
All right, because microdosing, that is of course psilocybin is a non-toxic.
No,
substance.
yeah. So the physical negative consequences are probably next to nothing compared to, for microdosing, are probably next to nothing compared to Ritalin, modafinil, and dexamphetamine and stuff like that. But the psychological damage that it can do, is definitely there.
I think what you highlighted, it's key to the experience of microdosing. I don't see microdosing as an extra I use in order to perform better. For me, I use it to also see the flaws in my current system and to eliminate those from the system.
Yeah.
So coffee for me, as I told you, is a big one.
Yeah.
I drink on a regular day 2 or 3 cups of coffee, but I am extremely sensitive to it. And I know I can work for 10 hours a day if I drink 2 or 3 coffee, and that my output goes through the roof. But I also feel anxious and I feel a little bit jittery and I feel like, what's going on, this kind of stuff. And when microdosing and then taking a coffee, I went bad on that. So that gives me a bad experience.
Yeah, it's really good that you highlight that, because this is so common, right? You get so much more perceptive of what's going on inside your body when microdosing, that for most people, drinking caffeine is really too much. Like even a normal cup in the morning could really make you feel super restless and jittery and anxious maybe. I have a lot of people that say, well, this didn't make me feel well when they start microdosing. And I asked them, well, did you drink any coffee? He said, yeah, just drink my normal coffee, 2-3 cups a day. And I said, well, that might be it. Might be it. So maybe cut out the coffee and it helps.
You said this in your workshop last week, I followed, that this is a common, now you say it again, of course, a common issue with microdosers. And it took me around 2 years to realize this myself, that it was the coffee. That I was so much like measuring the dose and like a gram and a milligram, and I was like, can I find the perfect sweet spot? And then one day I was like, maybe I should just delete the coffee, and that was actually the truffle I felt that said that to me, even from it was very spiritual, but okay, let's delete that. And from then on, it was, wow, this is it.
Yeah, and most people already report having increased amounts of energy, so you probably won't even miss your coffee during the day.
Yeah. All right. Again, the how it's of the protocol, I think it's clear.
Mm-hmm.
Dosage levels.
Yeah.
How does that work? Because you said already it's different. Everyone's different, right?
Yeah.
And no one has. It's not a one size fits all solution. How can you find your optimal dose?
Yeah. Well, Well, that is that's a process, and I think this is what this is something you really have to do yourself. So what you do is you start with an average dose. So when you take the psilocybin containing truffles, for example, your average dose would be half a gram, so 0.5. You take that, you try and feel what it does for you, right? And maybe you feel something, right? So you feel maybe this is already your sweet spot, right? So it could very well be that this works for you perfectly, but then you try and see, okay, what happens when I take other doses. So I always tell my clients to start with half a gram and maybe work up from there. So start with half a gram and they say, okay, well, I think I felt something or I did feel something. Okay, really nice. Next time, take a little higher dose. So take 0.75, quarter gram more. See what happens when you do that. Maybe it's a little bit too much. Then, all right, now you know that's too much for you. Go back to 0.5. Maybe check out what a quarter gram does for you. So this is kind of trial and error. Like people ask me, like, what happens when I take too much, and I can completely understand the apprehension people feel. Like, okay, taking psychedelics. If I take too much, I might freak out, or I might be hallucinating or anything. That's not what happens when you take too much. So what happens is often it can feel quite annoying and negative even, but most people feel restless. So they say I've got like restless energy. I feel jittery, maybe a little bit anxious, not as in super scared, but just the general feeling of anxiety that resides somewhere in your body. There's some tension that won't go away.
For me, it's a bit if I've had too much coffee.
Yeah,
It's a bit-
I have
the
the same.
thing.
If I
Yeah.
if I take too much, it feels like I've had. Well, I don't drink any coffee, but I know. Well, sometimes I do, and then I have so much energy and I'm so restless that I can't focus. Right, I can't keep my thoughts or my attention on one single thing. I get distracted a lot. People tell me that they feel a bit scattered in their thinking. So it's hard for them to keep track of conversations. It's hard for them to be in the present moment because their thoughts go, well, not nuts, but their thoughts jump up and down more than they used to, and then you get like the exact opposite of what you were looking for when microdosing. But this is what happens when you take too much, and I always tell my clients that this is going to happen at least once, and it's okay. You're not going to freak out. You're not going to hallucinate. You're not going to become psychotic. You'll be fine. This sensation, although it is unpleasant and uncomfortable, it will last anywhere from half an hour to a few hours, but it will subside. If this happens to you, try and see if you can work with it. Go outside, take a walk, maybe work out, get some of that energy out. If you're working and it's just not working out, maybe take a break. Maybe focus on something else. Maybe call someone and talk to them and get some distraction, and you'll be fine.
You'll be just fine.
You'll be fine.
Awesome. Right. I think that for me was an important thing as well to be aware that at least one day, for me was many more days by now, but that I've taken too much, and that you can experience a bit of of that sensations of anxiety of this is too much for me.
Yeah.
I'm feeling a bit restless, and that's perfectly fine. But then okay, this doesn't work. It's not if you failed, you've taken too much. No, you just found a way. This for me is a bit too much. I need to lower it from there.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a whole trial and error process, and that really is needed in this whole experience, because you have to find out for yourself. It's you're responsible of the experience.
Yeah, and I think it's also good to know that you want to feel the microdose, but lots of people, I think, take too much on a consistent basis because they think that is how it's supposed to feel. So they if they
Good
don't,
one. This is a good one. Yeah.
yeah. So if they don't feel that extra rush of energy, then they're not taking enough. Whilst that is actually counterproductive. So, those people that try to tell, lower your dose and see what it does for you.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so the how also for me, I think it's clear, and also for listeners, at least I hope, and otherwise we can elaborate in a next episode. To wrap up, I wanted to ask a bit more about your coaching sessions, because now you also, of course, work for Microdose Pro, and our clients can book a online coaching session or also a private session, even a workshop. How does this work? And maybe you can just briefly preview a little bit of what you're about to show and tell people in those sessions.
Yeah. So, like I said, I got involved with you guys because we talked about advising people, and you said, well, we're not really sure, but we do get a lot of people asking for help and asking for some supervision in this. And for me, within my work as a psychologist, like I said, I'm used to helping people commit to behavioral change, and I believe that microdosing can be really beneficial. And it might be good to go a little bit into why I think microdosing helps for this. So we've talked about the neuroplasticity, right, and the how microdosing can help your brain create new patterns, or like open up the doors to create new patterns. And I think that can be utilized even more efficiently if you do this in a structured manner. So if you go into microdosing, I think the way you and I did in the beginning, like just out of curiosity, like how does this work? What does it do to me? Then you kind of have, at least to me, was the experience that I had some periods of microdosing in which I microdosed but didn't really do much with it. So I had my microdosing days, and I felt my mood was lifted, and I felt nice, and it was pleasant. However, it didn't really bring about any change. And looking back on it, that actually feels a little bit wasteful of the time microdosing. And it's not a bad thing in and of itself, but if you were to kind of harness the potential that the microdosing gives you, you can make some real changes in your life, in the way you go about things. So that's why I decided I wanted to, offer these coaching sessions with people that, have a real question. They say, okay, so I feel down, or I do stuff in a way that I'm not happy about. And together we go into, okay, so what is it exactly that you want to change, and why do you want to change it? And we work on that. And whilst we do that, these people are microdosing. And I really find that, these people, when they're microdosing, they are so much more able to actually commit or go through these behavioral changes whilst actually getting insights in, oh wow, I did this in a certain way because of X and X and X, and it is super helpful. And the coaching is also really helpful in a way that if you do it for the first time, microdosing, you don't need to discover everything by yourself the way we did. And you can get someone to help you, to inform you. There's so much information on the internet, but maybe a little bit too much.
For me, that would have been so beneficial in the early days of microdosing.
Yeah.
To have someone with guidance.
Yeah. So those are the individual sessions that I do, right? So guide you and really help you find what works for you. And besides what works for you in a microdosing perspective, also really try and see what do you want to change, right? What do you want to do differently, and how can we do that? In the group sessions, which are also really nice, you get the same kind of information about how to go about it. It's less personalized, But the upside so that's maybe a downside for some. The upside of the group sessions is you share the experience with others. So there are more people in your group. You stay in touch with each other. You do get help in setting goals and in how to journal, just not on an individual level. So you have to do some more work or more stuff from yourself.
Yeah, I also like the group session setup with like I did it Friday.
Yeah.
For the first time ever, a group microdosing session. But it's very comfortable to be with people that are in the same mindset, and it gives you a sense of community that really helps.
Yeah. So that's really nice. You get to learn new people, which is always good, right? Especially in these times.
Oh, that's a good angle. Oh, I should remember that for marketing purposes.
Yeah.
Meeting new people online.
Yeah. No, so that is that's the coaching sessions that I do.
Awesome. I think this episode has covered quite a bunch of topics regarding microdosing and psychedelics. And if people have any questions, of course, they can leave comments or even ask us on the website, microdosepro.com. Also, they can book a session there with you if they want to do that.
Yeah.
I hope that, of course, will skyrocket after after this episode. But yeah, I think we have it. I think that this is a good episode. Maybe you have anything to add, anything you want to share as a closure?
No, not really. I think we talked a lot and we covered most bases.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what I would like to add is that this is such an interesting field of work, and there's still so much work to do. There's still so much things to find out, and I have all the best hopes for microdosing. Like we said, like we maybe we're kind of biased, but I do have some theoretically founded suspicions of what stuff is going to happen and what findings we're going to have.
I also have those, but that was my fear of this episode, is that I think in the next episode we should go into that stuff, like really dive into the studies and our maybe speculations on microdosing, also the business side of it, because we think, of course, it is a tremendous business opportunity right now, because more and more countries are openly making this stuff legal, and that is crazy, of course.
Finally.
And we are seeing some very interesting developments, and we also hope that this will push the scientific community forward with regard to microdosing and psychedelics.
And you see that happening already.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really nice.
This is really, it feels a little bit like the early crypto years for us. Although that is also maybe early still, but it feels a bit like 2014, 15 in that regard.
That's a beautiful comparison.
There's so much potential right now, and you see the good people, the really cool, interesting, and the good people, I would say, they are now drawn to this topic of psychedelics, and we get offers like every week. There's some like open solicitation for, like, how do you say this? Of someone that wants to work for us, and we're like, holy shit, this is insane. Like, we didn't expect this to grow this fast.
No, to take off like that.
Yeah, to take off like this, and that's just it's an amazing ride to be part of right now. And I think we should definitely ride this wave further.
Yeah, I know I am.
Awesome, man. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, man.
See you next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.